What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. What's going on? We should have some fun tonight. We will be covering, as mentioned, we got GreenBean that should be coming on to the show. We'll be covering, what did I put again? The rebuild. Okay, so we're in year 2 of a rebuild. I want to kind of review what makes this one different compared to some of the ones that we've seen before. We a lot of coaches to run through. We've had we've had Adam Gase, we've had Todd Bowles, we've had Rex Ryan. If we want to go back essentially the last 10 to 13 years. So it'll be interesting. There's been a lot of takes on it, a lot of different routes that we've tried to take. We shall see what happens, guys. We'll see what happens. But we'll have GreenBean here shortly, I'm sure. Appreciate anybody that's dropped in and stopped by, of course. If you guys have anything on your minds, as normal, drop a comment. It's going to be greatly appreciated. Any like, support, etc. is always awesome. But it should be fun. I don't really do many individual streams myself personally. I definitely don't really link up with a whole lot of people. I got Jets Flight Squad on Thursdays, and that's usually as far as it goes. But there's something I wanted to try in here too, real quick. We'll see if this works. Where did it go? Where did it go? Here it is. Okay, let me see. Hey, okay, that's what's up. I think this does work. So give me a few moments. Who am I missing? Okay, dope. I think that should work. So we may occasionally have some polls that I throw in the chat here. It's just something I'm personally interested in kind of seeing what happens. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. So essentially, the poll that's in there is asking who's your favorite coach of the last 10 years. I get a lot of slack for this because everybody tends to go to Rex Ryan, and it makes a lot of sense. He was the most successful coach that we've had. Not only was he the most successful in terms of regular season success, he led us to the playoffs, AFC championship games, back-to-back seasons. And I don't understand the infatuation. If we're keeping it 100% honest, he was a very divisive coach, in my opinion. He was a glorified defensive coordinator. The man paid almost zero attention to the offense unless something was going extremely wrong or extremely well. And you could hear it in press conferences. If he sat down with media, etc. If he was asked about issues, how he plans on developing things on the offensive side, there was never really any meaningful input. Everything was essentially, we need to make less mistakes. We need to make sure that we are running the ball more. If you're pressed about what that means, we need to be a more blue collar nose football team and run harder, run faster, run harder, do more. That's essentially what all of that boiled down to. And so when you go back and take a look at a bunch of different things, there's numerous conversations from Mike Westhoff out there. You can go back to all of the offensive coordinators. There's a lot of stress put on them. It was kind of like running a dual head coach system. And the man wanted no parts of the offense. He wanted to make sure that the general manager did what he needed to do to bring on the talent that the offensive coordinator said he would need to operate things effectively. And that's about as far as that went. It was pretty disappointing to me. But needless to say, I understand it. His model worked for the few years that we had it, but I have to keep reminding people it wasn't a rebuild. Rex Ryan's first 2 years of the New York Jets tenure was not a rebuild. He brought in a lot of veteran players. We've heard the same advice when I covered the information he provided to Robert Saleh. He brought in his program guys. They were able to help build up the team and whatever young talent that we had at the time. And they made a strong run. And this was on the back of Mark Sanchez being a rookie, playing kind of the Zach Wilson game manager role, do enough for us to win, don't do anything for us to lose. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I don't understand this putting him on a pedestal kind of situation that's been happening. Mr. Magic's kind of sounds like Salah. I don't know about that. I'd argue it's extremely different. I would say there's a solid understanding of how he expects his offense to run, where he can see that going to, and you can see that he has a hand into this. The biggest trait I would say we were looking for when we wanted to hire our new head coach after Adam Gase was somebody that can have their hands in all aspects of the team: offense, special teams, defense, free agency, draft. Robert Saleh seems like he's been able to handle those duties pretty well so far. And the difference to me is that when you hear him speak about each aspect of building this team and forming the chemistry on the roster and then getting it to perform out there on the field, you can tell he's not, missing from those meeting rooms. He understands what he has in the wide receiver room. He understands how he wants his running backs to operate. We've heard this recently with James Robinson and the situation that's been unfolding there with him not being able to see the field. We've heard it with our tight ends. He knows how the offensive line needs to look. And so for me personally, and maybe it's recency biased, Robert Saleh is the guy for me. He's definitely the most enjoyable coach, from listening to him in press conferences to the product he's put out on the field. The draft rooms, the One Jets Drive stuff has been phenomenal and given us a lot of behind the scenes stuff there as well. But ultimately, he's my guy. And before we had Robert Saleh, it was honestly Todd Bowles for me over Rex Ryan. I thought he was another kind of CEO coach kind of guy. He's flamed out, and of course, it hasn't looked well for him either, taking over for the Buccaneers. So maybe that's just a bad pick on my end. But all in all, I don't see a huge comparison. Rex Ryan and Robert Saleh are worlds away different guys. Now, I won't take this away from Rex Ryan in that his defensive prowess was ridiculous, especially running a 3-4 defense, in which I'd argue a lot of times with people, we've never supplied the proper linebacker talent to him. He's never had his version of a Ray Rice. And that's really what you would have to rely on when you're talking 3-4 schemes. Luke Kuechly and some of these other guys hadn't really come along by then just yet. So he didn't really have a force. Demario Davis was probably the closest guy after David Harris to us having that player, and we let him go. And he's been blossoming with the Saints ever since. So call it talent recognition. I think Robert Saleh does a good job of kind of seeing where some of these guys will be at if they stay consistent and stick with developing the way the coaches are asking. If he brings home a dub this weekend, I'll change my vote. I got you. So let's talk about it. The Bills are coming up this weekend. We'll be going to their house. A lot of Bills fans have been talking wild craziness. Normally, this is unexpected. Bills fans have generally been the more relaxed fan base, I guess I would say, when it comes to kind of having some of these conversations. And this weekend, they've been going absolutely crazy. And some of the chats I've been in and stuff like that, it goes beyond saying there's no way we'll get swept. The guys are saying the first win is a fluke. They're talking about all the pieces they were missing, the injuries. Even now, they're kind of making an excuse with the Von Miller injury. But a lot of people feel very comfortable in some of these returning pieces. Milano, for instance, Trey White coming back more healthier than he was in the first game. They're, speaking about Josh Allen and the performances that he's put on tape recently. So where I stand with this is when we won the first game, we did this behind a strong running game. Zach Wilson did essentially I don't even want to say the ultimate game manager role, but he literally made zero mistakes outside of that one fumble where he could have impacted the game negatively. There was a lot of plays left on tape that we've seen where we could have converted those into points. There are a couple plays that got saved by, shoestring tackles, things of this nature. But the feeling that I got from the first time we won against the Bills was that they were fully not prepared to face this new invented, revigorated Jets team. They overrated or underrated us, I guess I should say. And when it came down to it, we were able to make just enough plays to squeak by. And again, I'm saying just enough. There's still a lot of plays, as I mentioned, that were left out there on the field. We're also talking about us not having our full bevy of, healthy picks and things like that to be able to choose from. Okay, got you. GreenBean should be here in a couple moments. We didn't have our full bevy of picks available either. Breece Hall, AVT, Garrett Wilson is still trying to figure out what his magic with Zach Wilson looks like. Tyler Conklin, he was our most consistent piece this entire tenure. However, he's not able to find the ball in his chemistry with Zach Wilson, which, by the way, was very weird considering all of the press that we were getting during preseason and the training camps and stuff about how well they clicked. And that's what made Tyler Conklin jump out so early as a tight end one. But we had a lot of pieces that are underplaying, and it is a much different team once again. The Bills have their defensive core pieces back, minus Von Miller, but we're playing under Mike White. Our defense, I would expect to play the same, if not better. But we're now operating an offense under Mike White, a offense that is averaged, and I think Gunny helped me out with this a day or two ago. 469 or so odd yards of offense consistently. And again, it's only over the course of 2 games. But it looks extremely different. And we pointed out another stat before. The offense under any other quarterback that we've had play, we're talking Mike White, we're talking Joe Flacco, players that we both don't want averaging 60 touches, 60 times throwing the ball. We could be the number one offense in the league. And as crazy as that is. So I think it's vastly different. But let me bring in our guy here, GreenBean.
Hey, man, what's happening? How you doing?
The legend. How are you doing, boss?
Dude, I'm good. I'm so sorry I'm a few minutes late. My bad.
Look, you're all good. They know I don't stream often for 1, 2. They know I'm a family man. So normally the kids have me coming late anyways, but it is a huge pleasure for you to grace the channel.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm happy to be here. I catch you every now and again. So yeah, I love talking Jets. And I was very taken with your request to have me on. It took us a minute to get this done with our schedules, but I'm happy to be here, man. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. I think the Jets community as a whole, especially the content creators, we open the door for the most part to, have these conversations with everybody. I think that's definitely what, especially a lot of the newer ones like myself, when we jumped in, it's just like, hey, we've heard other newer guys, opened arms, welcomed. We all love to talk our Jets football, especially during a time of success.
Imagine that.
Has been few and far in between for us. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a long time, man. And I heard a little bit about what you were saying, beforehand with, the quarterbacks and all that. I look forward to where this conversation will go because, I'm out here just trying my best to figure out what this team is. You know what I mean? Like, look, we've had flash in the pans before, where even years where we've come out, looked really good. We were 8-3 and didn't make the playoffs. So like we've had this stuff, man. And I'm trying to figure out who these guys are. And in the meantime, We got to navigate through each other and all of our emotions out here. We're a fickle fan base, man. We're not one to toy with. We're out there, man. For real.
I've said this numerous times. I get a lot of pushback about it, but I think fickle is definitely the word that's maybe fickle, because I keep trying to come back and see if there's a better term. Maybe fickle isn't the best, but I would say there's definitely a lot of recency bias in what our thought process is.
Oh, yeah, recency bias. I like that one. Yeah, like look, fickle is interesting. It's really a word. It's funny. I try not to throw words out, right? Like for no reason. I do it, but try not to. The reason I use fickle, man, is because of the kind of the swings on whether we're either firing somebody or they're going to the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? That could be a 24-hour period between those extremes, man. And the thing is we're really doing it. Like, we believe that stuff. So it's an interesting ride being a Jets fan. Obviously I've been around for a little while now, and we don't get to see much, man. And like, we've been given a few scraps over the years in comparison to even our crosstown rivals, the Giants. They got 5 Super Bowls in my lifetime, and they even got to another one and lost one. And it's like, can we have some? Can we have a little bit? Give me some.
Yeah, I hear you. So definitely one of the things I think I love to try to make sure is well aware, not only when I'm producing content, but of course when I'm trying to match up with other people when I have the time. So if you don't mind, let's take it back a little bit just so they kind of understand the perspective that you're coming from. When did you become a Jets fan? What did it look like? Because for the most part, I'm younger. We're talking 93 baby coming in. Yeah. And then for the older guys, especially, though, there's been very few and far in between moments. So it's been decades and decades of misery. And this is just from people around my age. So I know the older crowd definitely has more experience with this. So what has that been like? What made you a Jets fan, and kind of how did we get to this point?
Well, let me, it's funny. We were just making fun. We had a stream last night. I do a stream on Thursdays, and we were talking about it. My Aunt Gina is responsible, right? So she was kind of my cool aunt, right? Like, so back when I was a little kid, she was my father's youngest sister. And she was only, I don't know, maybe, 10 years different than me, 12 years. So she had her license when I was like 8. So she would take me around and we listened to the Beatles, and she was cool. And she was a Jets fan. So she took me to, it was a restaurant, but she took me to a bar in 1982. And that was the Mud Bowl. That was the game. The AFC Championship was the Jets versus the Dolphins, famously now called the Mud Bowl. But I didn't know anything, so we show up and we're watching this game. And there were like 3 Miami fan men. They had mustaches. That's all I remember about them. They had mustaches, but they were being mean to my aunt. Like, they were really, they were smack talking. But I didn't know. I was 10 years old and I didn't like it one bit. I wanted to be able to. I wanted the Jets to do something to shut these guys up, and it just never came. It was interception. And I made a decision that day. So it's like my fandom was born in like revenge and hatred. It wasn't because I was like, hey, I love this. It was like, get them. Like, that's what. So, and I had watched some Jets football I'm from New York, I'm right outside of New York City, like in Newark. Okay. I lived about, I grew up about 15, 20 minutes from the city, and then I moved about another 10 minutes, 15 minutes west of that. And that's where I grew up. So up there, it's Giants and Jets, during the football season. And Hess gas stations, Hess used to be the owner of the Jets, green and white Hess signs all over the place. And during the football season, you used to be able to pull into a Hess gas station, and they would give you, each year they had something. So they would give you like these stencil drawings, like, 8x11 stencil drawings of like Richard Todd and Mark Gastineau. And the next year it'd be like these cards for the Jets. And they, so it was kind of like a festive thing. It was like to be a part of something. So yeah, it was my Aunt Gina. That game, that damn Mud Bowl, and the sack exchange was the team then. And we had like Wesley Walker and Freeman McNeil. So it was that team. My favorite all-time offensive Jet is Freeman McNeil. My favorite all-time defensive Jet is Mark Gastineau right now. The Klecko and all those guys are right there. I'm a big Dennis Byrd guy. But it was Klecko and Freeman, man. Like those, just watching those guys as a 10, 11-year-old kid, it got me. It got me, man. So I've been hooked since that year, 1982. Right, Magics. Typical Dolphin fans. They all got mustaches, the bastards. So that's the story, man. I've been hanging out ever since. I had season tickets for 6 or 7 years. I went to every single game for like almost 10 years. And then, I would go to like 3 another year, 5 the next year. So, well, I've been to a lot of Jets games, hung out with a lot of Jets fans, and saw a lot of Jets football, man.
That's awesome. I definitely still need to find my way to a Jets game. So I'm also from the East Coast, born in Somersville, grew up in Atlantic City.
Right.
So didn't get a chance, got pulled out, went to the West Coast when I was pretty young. But I was destined. If you're born from the East Coast, you're essentially destined to be a fan of the Giants or the Jets. And in rare occasions, you become a Philadelphia Eagles fan somehow. But
yeah, right.
That's generally the way that goes. So, okay. So you're definitely right in the thick of a lot of the waning final success in some aspect, sack exchange. So, okay, if we want to begin to kind of start to unravel some of this conversation, I already gave them some of the forethought. What makes our potential current rebuild more successful than what we've seen before? So we go back about 10 years. Rex Ryan enters the scene in 2009. Things sound spectacular, right? He's coming off of the Ravens. They've had a fantastic defense. He brings along some of his guys. We reached the AFC Championship. I was just telling them it's not even an arguable thing, though. We have to remember those first 2 years of Rex Ryan were not a rebuild. This was a team that was predicated on veterans coming in and the savvy of Rex Ryan and his defensive unit leading the way. And we had veteran offensive talent that we helped support in those administrations. But, 2011 comes and we start to see it. It starts to hit. So what were your thoughts about the Rex Ryan regime after those AFC Championship losses that we took?
Well, it's just so funny. You mentioned it's like even just that statement. It's like it's like there's such a high in there and there's such a low in what you just said. It's just crazy. But I gotta tell you, man. So I'll show my cards first. I'm gonna show my ass for a split second. So I'm not sure if you know this about me. So I right around 2005, 2000, the beginning, the 2005, 2006, I had a really bad time in my life. I was homeless and I was a real bad drug addict and everything. So I didn't pay attention to football like in 2005. When I heard that the Seattle Seahawks made the Super Bowl, I was like, get out of here. I thought it was a joke, because they were so bad for so long. But in 2006 is when I started to come back around. And that was when Mangini took over the team. And the first year, so he drafted DeBrickashaw Ferguson, left tackle, and then he used his second first-round pick on a center, Mangold. And I thought to myself, somebody who gets it. Then in the second round, he took a quarterback. He was like one of the better. Kellen Clemens didn't amount to too much other than a backup, but the philosophy, the logic. Then the next year, they grabbed Revis and David Harris, and it was like, okay, like I get it. Like I was so into what Mangini was doing, my life. I was building my life back up and everything. And I really enjoyed Mangini. But here's the thing. In that Brett Favre year, so Mangini's last year was with Brett Favre. I was a big Chad Pennington guy, but I did start to wonder. I mean, he was just looking like a guy that was never going to, his arm was toast. And I was like, so when they got rid of him, I understood. And I didn't love the trade for Favre. I'll be real honest. I was like, all right, what are we doing here? But he was really exciting and he was still really good. But when we started to decline that year, in my mind, it was Mangini he can't get us there. Like I didn't really love his coaching. I loved during his tenure, the player acquisitions, who we were grabbing and the team we were building. But I really didn't like Mangini as a coach. I just didn't. I didn't like so many things that he did. So when we went out and got Rex Ryan, like he was the guy I was like, please bring in this guy. Please, like a football guy, somebody with balls, you know what I mean? And I loved that hiring so much. He caught a lot of crap for I'm not here to kiss Belichick's rings, but in his initial press conference, that was the first thing he said. Like that was in the first thing he ever said. I'm not here to kiss Belichick's rings. And he got a lot of shit for that, but I got it. I understood. It was like, yeah, I'm not here. I'm here to beat that guy. And if I can, I can. If I can't, I can't. But make no mistake, he doesn't intimidate me. And that's not what I'm here to. And I understood that. And I liked that right away. Now, the 2 years with Rex are probably the most fun I ever had as a Jets fan. Like, I mean, from the moment he got here, from game one, we looked like a whole different team. But they were violent. They were fast and just everything about them. Mark Sanchez came out of the gate. He won 3 straight Rookie of the Week. It was like, oh my God, like we've arrived. And I had a lot of fun during those 2 years. In 2011, it was the strike year. So not strike, but there was a holdout, right? And they had to get
we needed to re-sign the new NFLPA agreement.
That's right. Exactly right. So free agency waited. So they had to push free agency and then there was this weird, it was like a one day for like everything can happen at the same time in free agency. And I literally thought that the Jets were going to sign Braylon Edwards, Brad Smith, Jericho Cotchery. Like we were going to, Sean Ellis, all our guys. And we were going to go out there and grab like 1 or 2 more players, maybe Nnamdi Asomugha to pair with Revis or whatever. And dude, when I remember I was at work, like watching the free agent ticker. My buddy who sat right in front of me, he was a Dallas fan, a diehard Dallas fan, and we're like watching to see what our teams do. That whole day, I was like, what the hell are they doing? Like, I just could. They were, Brad Smith signs with the Bills. Sean Ellis is signing with the Patriots. It was like, I didn't know what was happening. And they were going to let Cromartie almost walk away. And dude, and then they signed Plaxico Burress.
Just coming off the gun shooting incident, right?
They picked him up from jail.
I think he was still recovering.
Dude, so that year, look, I loved Rex, but Rex clearly shouldn't have had his hands in the cookie jar. You give him the players and let him coach them. He doesn't know what he's doing picking the players right now. And I'm not throwing stones at Rex. He'll do whatever you let him, you give him the keys to the car, he's going to drive it, right? So it was really painful to watch 2011. Santonio Holmes was made a captain. See this picture right here. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me show you this.
Yeah, this one's just out of frame.
So this right here, this is New Year's Day 2012. It's my son's first ever Jets game. Okay. Right here at this exact moment, Santonio Holmes is having a pushing match in the huddle and then benched himself in that game. So it's July 1st, 2012. So that was like the culmination of that year. That was the 2011 season. They put a lot into, they let Braylon Edwards go and Brad Smith, and they kind of propped up Santonio Holmes, brought in Burris and Mason, another kind of a punky guy. And our team has never been the same. We've never been the same. So like, I really do look at 2011 as the year it all fell apart, man. Like that to me, it ended a really nice period because even Herm before Mangini was pretty good. We had a lot of winning years. If you look over our record from like 1998 to 2000 and whatever, 10, it's like we're a pretty respectable franchise. And 2011 came and here we are.
Yeah, I think on average we're winning maybe 5 to 6 games from 2011 to maybe like I want to say maybe 2017 off the top of my head. And then we start averaging like maybe 4.
Wow, terrible. Think about it. The last 2 years, we won 6. Like we already have 7 this year. 6, 2 years. It's crazy the pain we go through, man. That's terrible.
I can remember pretty clearly about the last 10 years. Within the last 5 specifically, I remember a couple times specifically where I was like, I can't be a fan of any other team, but I don't know if I could be a fan of the Jets anymore. Like I might just have to stop watching football.
Totally.
all together because this is brutal. I can't talk to friends and family because I'm just going to get crapped on left and right. My brother's a Patriots fan. The other one's a Falcons fan. I'm getting, the Tom Brady, Tony Gonzalez, yeah, left and right. And I can't even hang my hat on the fact that we are a strong defensive team anymore. So not only is it that, maybe we're not winning, but we're not losing by 30 points. I don't even have that anymore. So I'll put this out there question-wise for you. Do you feel like we made too late of a shift prior to Adam Gase to trying to acquire an offensive coach? Because there's been a lot of turmoil in the fan base about some of our head coach candidacy picks.
Yeah. So you mean like post Gase?
No, so let's talk even post. Let's go post Todd Bowles because I think people were still on board with him originally as well. Yeah. But post Todd Bowles, when we had a couple of options out there prior to Gase, do you feel like there was a better option for us, or did we make the right pick and it was just the wrong structure with the team and players? Or
yeah, let me tell you, man. So I've been on like the internet version of Jets fandom since 1998, right? It's 1999. So I hang out most at a place called Jetnation, right? It's a huge forum, thousands of Jets fans. And that day, like that week, we're like waiting to see who the Jets are interviewing. And we're hearing rumors about Monken and Matt Rule and all these guys, right? My guy that year was McCarthy. I couldn't believe that a Super Bowl winning head coach said publicly, the only team I'll coach this year is the New York Jets. Arizona offered him the bag. They offered him full control. He said no. He said, if the Jets don't hire me, I'm going to take a year off. Like, I couldn't believe that that's what was going on. And that was because of Sam Darnold. Only he was was coming off his rookie season and blah, blah, blah. So I was convinced that they should. I thought they should, but I thought that they would hire Mike McCarthy. I said, it's stupid not to. And like you said, shifting from like just a long line of defensive guys, let's just get an offensive mind in here. The league is shifting. Let's do this. Let's do this the right way. Bring in some offensive focused coaches and have an offensive regime. So I liked that. But so then it was the Jets are very close to signing Matt Rule. Now, there were some rumors, so I did my research on Matt Rule. I'll be honest, I didn't know who the hell Matt Rule really was. I'd heard of him. I knew, you know what I mean? I didn't know Matt Rule. So I did my research like I always do. And he turned two smaller college franchises around from obscurity and from really negative franchises to success. And that was
Rule was Temple and Baylor, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, all right. If that's what you're doing, he's ready to go up to the NFL. He's done it before. Okay, great. I'm into Matt Rule. Still would like Mike McCarthy, but Matt Rule, I'm happy with that. I didn't want Todd Monken, and there was a few other. I didn't want Caldwell and a few other guys. I said, okay, Matt Rule and Mike McCarthy. When it came out that the Jets hired Adam Gase, it took me a solid 2 hours of scouring the internet to believe it was real. That's how I was like, there's no way we hired that ridiculous person. Like, there's no way. I was convinced it was a false report. And then it was Schefter. Then it was Rappaport. And I was like, no way, guys. Like, I couldn't believe it. So and then we had that friggin' press conference.
Yeah, the eyeballs.
The eyeball conference. Dude, you know what? Let me tell you. This, my wife, I've been married we just celebrated 15 years. So when Adam Gase was hired, that was what? 2019, I guess it was 2019. So I'd been married to my wife for like 7-8 years at the time. Mm-hmm. My wife, I was watching that press conference, and my wife just came in the room, and she stood behind me, and she watched it for 2 minutes, and she said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Right?" And she put her hand on me and said, "I'm so sorry." That's real. Like I cannot. She's like, you just can't catch a break. I'm like, help me, get me out of here. That's how I felt. Get me out of here. So I hated the Todd Gase hire. I never thought for one second that he was a good coach or that he was going to succeed. He didn't hire a quarterback coach. Dowell Loggins was a complete fake offensive coordinator. It was just a complete sham. Now I liked Greg Williams a lot, and I said, okay, well at least he's here and we can do
Wow.
something, you know.
Okay.
But
I think a lot of us were not fans of Greg Williams. He had
yeah,
that whole he was coming off the whole New Orleans Saints targeting situation, right?
yeah. What they call that again? Something
Um
gate, some kind of
yeah,
gate. Yeah,
Target
but
Gate or
here's
something.
the
Yeah.
yeah yeah. What was it?
Oh no, because he Bounty Gate.
Bounty Gate. There it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Now look, but Greg Williams had been back in the league for like 4 or 5 years. He did a really good job with the Browns defense, and so I liked Greg Williams as a hire. He's not the guy I wanted to go out there and get, but I said, okay, Greg Williams is here. At least I know he's going to give you a hard defense. They're going to be aggressive and the whole thing. And so there was at least that. But dude, I was miserable during the Todd Gase years. No, I tried. I tried to be positive. I tried to be constructive. We had that 6-2 run at the
Yeah.
end of the year. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, hey, wins are wins, right? But yeah, I mean, it was misery, and I think coming off of Adam Gase, I still hoped that they were going to sign an offensive guy. I hope that they didn't get like scared away from offense now, and they ended up hiring Robert Saleh. Admittedly, Saleh wasn't even on my list. He
Okay.
wasn't. He wasn't one of my guys. Now, once I saw their list, Dable, Caldwell was on it again, I believe. They interviewed Brady and a bunch of
Right.
guys. Saleh was up there. I didn't want Arthur Smith. Did not want Arthur Smith. And I prayed Joe Brady or Arthur Smith. I said anybody but those two, I'll be happy. I wanted Dable out of that group, but I wanted them to hire or to interview at least Greg Roman and Fitzgerald from the college ranks, and the guy from the other guy from Iowa State. So I wanted one of those guys, but Saleh, I didn't dislike him. He wasn't on my list. So but I would have liked to see them go offense, at least when we were in the process. I was like, here we are again, right back to defense, So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I was purely offense until because we did. It's very weird. The New York Jets are very consistent about some of their processes. So I know we went through and we what did we call them? We had like our consultation guys that they wanted to bring in again. Same thing we did with Adam Gase. And so they had them lean a little bit more towards Robert Saleh, from my understanding. But Dable was my guy.
Yeah, me too.
I can't remember his name anymore, but the guy from Iowa State specifically because I love the way their offensive lines turn out in it, year in and year out every year. The defense plays hard. So I figured that was two consistent things that are not hard to transfer. Robert Saleh only came into the mix once I was deep into research. I think I went way back to, I found everything from when they were talking about him coming up under the whole 9/11 tragedy stuff and all
Right.
that started hitting the news. So I went way back, especially when it was like down to him. And then I think it was between him and they said they got rid of Dable early. It was Robert Saleh or was supposed to be.
Arthur Smith. I think it
Was it
was
him?
Arthur. I think so. I could be wrong. I thought it was down to Arthur Smith, and because they brought him back for a second interview.
Right.
So I
Okay.
was like, I
So
was
maybe it was
terrified.
him. I thought it was a different name then, but
Maybe it was.
I
But
was leaning heavy offense. I would have loved to see Greg Roman, but I heard they protected him or something, if I remember correctly.
they did.
Yeah.
They did.
So from the standpoint of what it looked like we were going to get, personally going into the draft, Zach Wilson wasn't my guy. I was sold on Trey Lance. If we're going to go physical attributes, Trey Lance offers the better size, the running ability. He's done it longer. The kid's also young, and he kind of seems like he had the Josh Allen backstory. Blue collar kid, doesn't really get involved in the media. Mentally, probably strong. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I won't say Robert Saleh's been a bad hire. I guess that's where I'll start with it. To me, he's been the most complete coach that we've had out of the last 3 or 4 head coaches. Herm Edwards might be the only guy from like a CEO perspective that maybe comes close, in my opinion. Robert Saleh, you hear him in the offensive rooms when he comes out in his press conferences and he's talking about how he wants this offense to operate. You can tell he understands what an offense looks like schematically, how to develop players, all of these different things. So, best of a bad situation from a Jets fan perspective, I guess you can put it when it comes to picking up another defensive guy. But I get the feeling with this rebuild, because of these attributes that he's brought and being able to galvanize a lot of these guys, it feels different to me. This does feel like the first successful undertaking of a rebuild that we're coming across. And the previous ones have had a lot of hiccups, right? Rex Ryan, as you mentioned, he wanted his hands in everything. He didn't fully understand what he was doing. Player acquisition was bad. He got into the, and I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is, and I should remember this. The Texans coach that was trading people left and right for like pennies on the dollar.
What was that? Who was that?
What was the Texans coach name that had got fired last?
Right. Yeah.
He ended up playing the hybrid like GM head coach role.
O'Brien.
There we go. Absolutely horrific at it. I don't want to put Rex Ryan in that mold. When we take a look at some of those moves that were happening, when he realized Mark Sanchez probably wasn't going to be his guy anymore, we bring in Geno, and his defense starts to fall apart, and he can't quite capture the attention of these guys anymore.
Yeah.
We see a huge division. And this is why I bring up that Rex Ryan was not my favorite coach, even though he's brought us the most success. He was very divisive. Everything that happened in terms of the locker room splitting and things were because he had a huge focus on the defense, and he was almost oblivious to anything that was happening offensively. Even so much to the point, and I think this was almost a parallel to like Adam Gase. A couple moments in games where there's a key drive going on. Of course, Rex Ryan is focused on the defense. We get the ball offensively. He has no idea what's going on.
No idea.
Reverse the picture for Adam Gase.
Same thing.
So things like that stick out to me, and it's like a burned image that's in my head. That I still remember the back page New York papers where you see Rex Ryan like turned around. He looks flabbergasted and confused. And it's things like that that stick out for me. I don't get those same sentiments from Robert Saleh. And that is it's a huge thing for me, that even in what could have been a very horrific last season or first year with Robert Saleh, 4-12, things looked very rough for us. I think we were close to 32nd for the majority of the year, both offensively and defensively. Literally, the only good thing about the team was special teams. Nobody wants to tune in on Sundays for special teams. Not for that to be the only critical part of a game that you watch.
Right.
So Robert Saleh, I guess if we want to go to present day, and then, we might jump back and forth a bit. How are you feeling about what's been done so far? With the product he's put out on the field?
Well, I happen to agree with, 99% of what you just said. As far as your observations and the way you saw things and kind of where you were leaning with your thoughts, I was in a similar, a similar place. And as far as what I see from, and let's expand it from Saleh to Douglas and Saleh, right? Because it's kind of like, we had this first year with Joe Douglas. It was a weird thing where, we let Mike McCagden use all the draft picks and spend $120 million, and then we fire him and we bring in Joe Douglas. So, I didn't like the idea of kind of pinning any of that stuff on Joe Douglas. But I liked Joe Douglas. I liked who he was. I liked his pedigree. I've always said, man, if we could mimic an organization, like if it's the Steelers or the Ravens, that would be what makes me happy. Like those are the two organizations I think that are built for the long-term success. Now, the Ravens don't win Super Bowls every year, but they're always among the best. Always. They have a bad year and then they're back. So the fact that Joe Douglas came from there, I was very, very happy with that. Now, when the Adam Gase thing, I am of the belief that Joe Douglas knew Adam Gase was never going to make it. He just knew it. The guy's garbage. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't do anything. Like you said, he doesn't even pay attention to the defense. Jamal Adams came out with all that stuff. Now, I don't think Jamal Adams handled it the right way, but I still don't think he was lying. In fact, the fact that Adam Gase never addresses the team, he doesn't talk to the defense. I buy it. I buy every one of those words. So that kind of stuff, I believe Joe Douglas saw that and was just like, okay, well, let's just let this play out and he'll leave. And when he brought Robert Saleh in, even though you and I we're thinking Dable, we want offense, this for whatever our reasons are. Joe Douglas is looking at this. Who's going to be lockstep with me? Who sees this long-term vision in a similar way that I see it? I come from the Ravens. Yeah, I'm an Ozzie Newsome protege. I see it like who can I find that I feel is going to lock into my mindset? And it seems to me, just like you said, it feels very, very different. It doesn't mean that we're going to have success right out of the gate. But from the word go, it looks to me like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, and then by extension, Ulbrich, LaFleur. I love Tony Oden. I even like Miles Austin. As the wide receivers coach, I like these. I like our coaching, our coaching staff. And when you look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, the way that they're doing it, number one, getting rid of every asset that has any value. You look at your team and you go, Sam Darnold ain't it. Jamal Adams ain't it. Like, these are not my pillars. These are not the pillars that I want to build my team upon. So he just squeezes the lemon. Give me a second, a fourth, and a sixth. Sure. You give me 2 firsts and a third. Sure. Leo, give me a third and a fifth. Fantastic. Oh, you want to do a sixth or fifth for Avery Williamson? Take them. That's what he did. He acquired as many assets as he could. And Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas have just slow rolled this thing. Now, for us out here, it's stressful. It's, come on, give me something. 32nd ranked defense all year, like you said. That's not easy to watch, man. And I can't tell you I was happy all last year, but I can observe it and see it in a way like, guys, something different is happening here. Like, even if the players don't work out, very similar to what I said about Mangini, the logic behind the acquisitions, the draft picks, left tackle, guard, quarterback, edge, wide receiver. Like, dude, we hadn't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2003. Why? Not one? In 2000, this organization has been stuck on stupid for so long. And Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, they're not in a rush. They're going to do this the right way. And we're seeing it this year. Let me ask you, have you seen one game where you could say the team quit this year? Any?
Not a chance.
Not a second. I mean, like, look in Cleveland, dude. They were the coach brought his kids to the sideline. The CBS was showing the graphic. They just broke a record. They haven't won, blah, 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 whatever, Cleveland. They were partying. The Jets said, there's still 2 minutes left in this game. And they won. You know what I mean? Like, so that's something we haven't seen here, man. And I think, again, I can't predict the future, but what I'm seeing is very, very different than what we've seen. And I've been around since 82, man. It's looked the same for 35 years. It's just been the same for the most part. Parcells a little different, you know what I mean? A couple of years. But I'm with you, man. It looks very different. And I happen to like the way that they're doing it. It's very similar to if I had the keys. It looks very similar to how I would do it. Maybe not the same players. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to how I think the team should be built. And I think that we're going to see, we have the potential for long-term success based on that, where before it's like we just hired big name free agency, guys, we just paid them money. Like it was never going to work. It was never going to work. And I think this one actually has a chance to.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and Joe Douglas gets a lot of slack for this, but I mean, we all know it's a throw of the darts. It's 50-50 at best if you're a great GM and identifier of talent. Free agency. And then when we're talking, player trades, draft compensation, etc., that whole realm of the offseason, I think, is where we've kind of seen growth from Joe Douglas, where we haven't seen it from anybody else. He's drawn his foot in the sand. I'm not overpaying for players. We're going to stop all of that crap, right? We were just talking about it on Jets Flight Squad. We're not doing this anymore where we're handing bags out to Tremaine Johnson and we're getting 12 games worth of play, and those 12 games are crap.
Right.
None of that's happening. The other piece is we're going to identify not only guys that we feel like have the talent to help accelerate this rebuild, but we're also going to get guys that feel like program guys. We don't have to go back to the well and steal from the Eagles and the Ravens and some of these places Joe Douglas and or Robert Saleh have been from. Granted, we did do that, but we pick up a DJ Reed, which was a huge one for me, especially knowing the backstory that Robert Saleh initially played him completely incorrect. Forced him into a box. This spoke volumes to me in terms of Robert Saleh being able to identify where he's went wrong, evolving his thought process in terms of player archetypes versus scheme fit, which I think has been something, as you mentioned, we've been stuck in the cauldrons for a very, very long time. I mean, for a stretch there, I want to say maybe 7 years in a row, we were drafting a defensive lineman in round one when we had plenty of other options.
Right.
In a 3-4 defense, I was flabbergasted. I've never seen anything like that from another NFL franchise. But I think free agency, some of these player-for-player trades that we've had, I love a lot of these little additions. Pick up a 6th, 7th round pick. We're going to go ahead and flip that for a guy that maybe has had some bad injury luck, but he's a elite high ceiling guy. If we can get our coaching staff to make it work, we'll look brilliant. Quan Alexander, bring in Tyler Conklin coming off high career years for themselves. It's things like that I think you understand the bigger picture of what he's putting into place. And we're also we're not tying ourselves, or we're not marrying them. There's no financial slip here that says we're mortgaging 50% of our future when we draft these, sign these guys anymore,
right.
Which is huge. One of the biggest underrated aspects of Joe Douglas coming in was we cleared our entire dead cap space in like 2 seasons. Last year, and I think still going into this year, we're like one of the top 10 lowest teams that are paying players that are no longer on the squad. That used to drive me up a wall, that we still have to go out here and pay a D. Milliner and pay a Tremaine Johnson and pay a lot of these other guys that have done so little for us that they're still packing shopping bags somewhere, and we're still 18 million in the hole for them.
Right. Think about that, man. This was the first year since Joe Douglas has been here that Anunwa, Tremaine Johnson, and the rest of these guys, that Le'Veon Bell, they were still on his ledger. They were still there. So this was the first. I mean, that's how crazy it's been. And you used a term I really like, which is mortgage the future. Like, Joe Douglas hasn't done that. And now maybe the fans, maybe we would, in the beginning, he was kind of labeled as cheap, right? Oh, he's too cheap. And he's like, hey, I'm not doing it. I don't need to pay an extra $4 million for that guy. It's like you look at the Jack Conklin thing. That was his first offseason. The first guy that he went after was Jack Conklin, the right tackle. And I wanted Jack Conklin from the Titans. I wanted him bad. And he lost out to the Browns. Word was Joe Douglas was in it to the end. And then he just, nope, too rich for my blood. He pivoted and grabbed George Fant. Now, George Fant was a very untested. He's very, raw. He'd only played a handful of snaps, really, at the position we were drafting him. I mean, we were signing him for. And Jets fans, including myself, I wondered, man, is this just like kind of a panic move? Did he just kind of pivot and grab the only guy he could and even overpay him? But look how that's worked out. I mean, George Fant has been, this year he's injured, but he was our starter at right tackle. Then he was our starter at left tackle. He had a career year last year, and he's been injured this year. And then, that is what it is. But it's a slam dunk with what Joe Douglas did. And Jack Conklin, word is, he's going to probably be leaving Cleveland this year and whatever, but who knows if that happens. But the point is, you don't always need to hamstring your salary cap when there are other options. And if your general manager knows how to identify talent, clearly he does. Look at Michael Carter II. Look at Michael Carter. Look at Brandon Eccles. Look at Bam Knight. I mean, there's all Huff. There's guys sprinkled all over our drafts that, I mean, dude, we couldn't hit on our first round picks forever. And now we're plucking the starting caliber guys from the fourth and back. And I think, when you can do that, you don't, it removes the necessity to overpay guys to come here because you can't do it any other way. Like you said, like you draft D. Milner, he sucks. Now you got to go pay Jermaine Johnson, and then he sucks. And then now, and that doesn't matter. I'm not getting any football play, but I have no freaking money, So it's like, that's what ends up happening. And I appreciate, even though it's frustrating from a fan level, for, fan perspective at times, I appreciate that he is doing this in a way that's going to be healthy for the long term. I'm not selling the future or mortgaging the future for this year. And I like that.
100%. I think a key terminology that we've heard from every coach that has walked in, and it's, their position of choice, whatever their flavor is for what that pipeline will be. But we've heard that term. And I think this is the first time that we've seen from all aspects, free agency, draft, priority, undrafted free agents, a pipeline being built. Rex Ryan wanted it with his cornerbacks. I mean, we tried to draft one almost every year. If in the first round, if not in the first, then we tried at least in the second or third. Todd Bowles, he ended up loving his defensive players, and he just kind of sprinkled those wherever. Adam Gase, who knows what the hell he was thinking at any given point in time. We know Robert Saleh loves his defensive linemen. Joe Douglas loves his offensive linemen, and we've seen significant amounts of resources go there. Have they all worked out? No, but I would argue that's with any franchise more often than not. Going back to one of the things that you mentioned that I love, though, is what kind of franchise are we essentially molding ourselves after? The Steelers is one of those prime candidates for me. We don't really have too many connections with them. But if I remember correctly, this is Todd Bowles' first year since he's been coaching the Steelers that he's even having a losing season. And when you take a look at them consistently being playoff teams, that means in terms of the draft, which is where our attention usually goes, they're drafting, 24th or lower in the pecking order. And I think one of the more interesting things to me is that, as you mentioned, we've been able to find these significant young talents that have either developed early or they've been somewhat of a star right out of the gate, at least in terms of flashes, very early from rounds 4 through undrafted. And I think we're starting to see that pipeline being built at this point, and it's been early, but I still kind of keep tabs on what can happen in the offseason. There's conversations that maybe we don't need to re-keep Carl Lawson, which would have been insane a year ago. There's conversations that maybe we can get out of CJ's contract. How can we move on from Zach Wilson crazily already? There's a lot of different places. CJ Mosley, people are willing to eat his contract just for us to bring in somebody cheaper. And you can go maybe everywhere outside of linebacker right now, but you can go and take a look at the depth chart and you can look at guys and say, give them a shot. We've seen something happen in a short period of time that at least makes us happy. Jonathan Marshall, for example. I have no idea why we signed Solomon Thomas. I would have loved to see Tanzel Smart or Jonathan Marshall instead. But there's a bevy of practice squad players, even right now, that probably will be playing on somebody's 53-man roster.
Yeah,
and that's been extremely exciting for me because I haven't paid attention to practice squad for years. The last guy I liked that might have ended up on practice squad was Antonio Allen, the safety. I think he was the last guy to get a pick 6 on Tom Brady. He was a huge fan of mine. But it's been interesting how much more tapped in we've been able to be as a fan base during this 2-year stint with Robert Saleh so far, as compared to what I've seen with a lot of these other eras of football that we've kind of watched.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Allen. I was a really big Antonio Allen supporter. I thought he was a guy. I thought he was going to make it. Like I thought he was going to be one of the like a Victor Green, undrafted free. I think Allen was a 7th round pick if I remember correctly. But he was on and off the practice squad and everything. But I really liked him, and I think you're right. I think he's the last guy to get a pick six on Tom Brady. That was an exciting moment, man. That was good. We won that game. That was a good one. But I pay attention to the practice squad. I have been for a long time. I like to one of my areas of interest is like the later portion of the draft. I'm really interested. Yes, the front end's very exciting and the big names and all, but I really like to pay attention to that stuff. And when, there are guys that you study and you watch some games, some full games, and there are guys that you like. You go, this guy could be something. And then your team actually grabs them as an undrafted free agent. Most recently for me, is Kenny Yeboah. I was a big Kenny Yeboah guy. And then when we grabbed him, I got like a million DMs. It was like, holy shit, you got your guy. And, so it's exciting for me. And I think the thing that we have to remember is that, just like you said, the word pipeline is paramount to real teams having any longevity. Like good teams, they have an established pipeline of talent. Like in the Steelers, we're talking about them. They have for years, way back since the 90s, man, if they lose a guy, he could be the best in the league. Wide receiver, defensive end, linebacker, doesn't matter. They lose him, he signs a big contract. The next man up is just as good. It happens all the time. And it happens for the Ravens too. The Ravens lose big name free agents every year. The next guy up, same impact. Why? Because they've been developing this person in their system for the last year, 2 years, 3 years sometimes. So Jets fans, we're so used to, if a guy comes in and he has a bad game, sucks. Get him out of here. Because players don't last here. We have over the past 20 years, we have a handful of guys that have been here 5 years or more. You know what I mean? Maybe in the 2000s, but like in the last 10 years, let's say there's only a handful of guys that made it 4 or 5 years with the Jets. We're usually like, 2 years, 3 years and out. Even the quarterbacks, like, look, even Sam, he was the third overall pick, 3 years, boom. And Zach, I don't know.
It's looking like
dude, I don't know what's going to happen with that kid, right? We don't know. So like when it takes a guy 2 years to make an impact at all, Jets fans have already written him off. And that's, it's what we've seen. So it's hard not to be that way. But you look at teams like the Ravens and Steelers, they have guys sitting there grooming, just simmering on the back burner, caramelizing to perfection. When they're ready to come in, they live, eat, sleep, and breathe that system. They don't have to go sign a guy and teach them the system all of a sudden. Like we, look at our tackle situation. We had to go and get, we're down to our sixth friggin' tackle. We have to go and get guys from practice squads, and they're starting 2 weeks later. Dude, they've been here for 10 days. Whereas when you have a developed pipeline, not that would have helped with this tackle situation. This is absurd, what's going on. But when you have a guy that's ready to come in, like a Jamie Sherwood was here all last year, even though he's injured. He still knows the system. He played a little bit last year, and he's been playing special teams like a demon all year. He got in those 3 plays for CJ Mosley when he went out. He made all 3 tackles, back to the bench. He's still on special teams. Now, next year, if they decide to start this guy, or they say, hey, we don't need Quan Alexander, we don't need whoever, because Sherwood's ready to go. This guy's going to be 3 years in this system, ready to hit the ground running. Now, if you can do that all over your team, wide receivers, running backs, linebackers, offensive linemen, that's when you can live in this salary cap world and you can stay relevant. And we haven't seen that here. And like, again, Jets fans, when a guy's on our practice squad, I would say 8 out of 10 Jets fans think he's already a bust. He sucks. I mean, not even a bust, but he's a waste of time. He's a waste of space. Like you said, you brought up Jonathan Marshall and even Tanzel Smart. I thought the same thing. Why did we bring in Saleh when we have Jonathan Marshall here? Like, let's see him. But now Jonathan Marshall, next year, he's going to be 3 years in this system. Now, either they're going to know if he sucks ass, right? Those are time to go, or they're going to know like this guy's ready and we don't need Solomon Thomas and we don't need Sheldon Rankins or whoever it might be that's costing us $8 million. We can put in Jonathan Marshall. He's 300,000 or whatever it is. You know, my numbers are off, of course, but that's the whole logic behind it. And Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh seem like they're able to do that. There are guys coming off the bench right now that are having impact, and they look like, dude, 3 years ago, some of these guys would have been the best player on our team.
Yeah.
In your third string. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that's the positive. Like, look, you know, I want to make the playoffs this year. I want to have a winning record this year. But in the event we don't, and we get to 8, 9 wins, whatever it is, this is a crazy successful season. Even everything up to this point. Obviously, we would have preferred if the quarterback we used a second overall pick on made it. Maybe that would have been good. Oh, where are you going? You going to get some dinner?
Nah. I heard my dog like whining. My boys left.
Yeah, right. Life, man. Life. You know what's funny? That's why I built this thing. So I have this whole studio. This is a separate building than my house, because that's it. I hear somebody crying. I'm like, what's happening?
I can't wait. I'm getting there.
Yeah. Well, for 2 years, I mean, like I started doing this 3 years ago. For 2 years, I lived in an RV. So I was doing these videos in an RV. So my kids were 5 feet over there. My wife was right there. And it looked like I was in a room, but I was with everybody the whole time. It was hard, man. That wasn't easy. Let me tell you, this is nice.
Nice. I it's funny. I'm very much on the same situation. It's a condo. It's not an RV, but still, like the way I try to be involved, right? I got to go to work and do the paycheck thing.
Right.
When I'm home, I try to, be involved. Don't be on the phone. Don't be on the laptop. Don't be sitting there trying to watch Jets games, the 3 hours I get with my kids before bedtime. Right. So it's rough. We joke all the time. Most of my videos are captured at like 1 a.m. when I'm trying to get the last bits of energy before I get like 4 hours of sleep and got to do it all over again. But one of the things, there's a lot of one of these things statements I tend to have, but I've loved kind of this shift that I've seen in draft philosophy. One of the things that used to irk me to no end was watching some of these players that we picked, especially early on in the draft, but we had no faith in our coaching staff to do anything with them. So it was almost like year in and year out, we were spending our top picks on a Trayvon Walker. Do you drool and salivate over him? I'm sure you absolutely do, right? The guy's a freak of nature. He's out here doing things that are unheard of for guys his size, moving in, a different pace. But he doesn't have the technical skill set. He doesn't have some of these things that from a floor perspective, what's the worst kind of performance we can get? You're not comfortable with that. And so you're betting the house on this top end performance that may never be there. Meanwhile, he's, churning in and out. And this is a hypothetical. He's obviously not playing like this, but he's churning out 0 tackle games, etc. Like one of the ones that crushed me was the Quentin Coples pick during the Rex Ryan era.
Oh man.
There's been plenty of those, right?
Yeah.
Calvin Pryor, like those kind of situations, those I'm less angry with. I can understand the need, or at least, the floor there wasn't as scary for me. But like the Quentin Copel stuff, things like those were ones that hurt me a lot because I had no faith that there was going to be development there.
Right.
If there's not going to be development, then having a high ceiling guy means absolutely zero. He's going to be a waste. And as you mentioned, we're going to see him walked out in 2 to 3 years. We as fans, specifically for this Jets franchise, I don't know how the Giants generally operate, but again, they've had a little bit more success, so maybe some leeway than we do. We will walk you out of the building extremely quick. I can't remember how many times I've seen the news flashes of us flying planes over the building, saying fire the GM.
I know.
Fire the coach. I'm sure if the players were some kind of all-star level guy that was like upset, we were close to doing it with Jamal Adams. I heard like if it was worth it for players, I'm sure we would do it for them too. Like at this point, it's a fan-controlled team. The Johnsons were willing to bend to our needs pretty quickly. They just didn't have great plans on what plan B was going to be. And I guess that was the other frustrating part. If plan A fell through for us, we had absolutely no backup, or at least
Right.
that's the way it appeared. Somebody picks the guy in the draft we love. Oh crap, what do? Go pick the guy that runs a 4.2. We need an offensive lineman. Let's grab Stephen Hill.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're so right, man. Plan A was it. And that's the thing. It's like, for so long, we as Jets fans talked about that, that we have no depth. We have no depth. Like, even if our front, if our starting line players, even if we felt good about them, we had some nice players. We knew it's like, if anyone goes down, we got nothing. Like, we're bringing in an undrafted free agent or whatever. It's like, we put so many resources into having to overpay people to come here and everything. And just for shits and giggles, you brought up Quentin Coples. Now, I watched that draft in a bar by myself in Hollywood, Florida, called Ricky's. Now, Ricky's is famous for wings. I actually, it's funny. I used to watch my games there, and one day they wouldn't put the Jets game on. It was a late game, and because they're Miami, and the guy was just being a jerk, and he just wouldn't put it on. And it was last time I was ever there. I told him, I'm here every week, bro, and I whatever, the whole thing. So I never went back. I've never been back. But that night, I watched that draft. I was convinced the Jets were going to come away with Melvin Ingram. That was the guy. If the Seattle Seahawks pass on Melvin Ingram, the Jets are grabbing Melvin Ingram. Now, just so you know, these are the guys that came. So I was happy. I wanted Melvin Ingram, but who I really wanted was Chandler Jones out of Syracuse, right? Yeah. So the Seattle Seahawks take Bruce Irvin out of West, just the craziest pick. He was projected to be like a second-round guy or whatever. So they take Bruce Irvin. I go, yeah, oh my God, we're going to get Melvin Ingram. Nope, we take Quentin Copel. So here's the guys after. So Melvin Ingram is 2 picks later to the Chargers, right? Then we have Chandler Jones. We also have guys like David DeCastro, guard. We needed linemen. We could have taken him. Donta Hightower, right? Then you got like Harrison Smith. Then you had later, Janoris Jenkins, Alshon Jeffrey, like Bobby Wagner. Dude, they were all players that I would have been happy with. All of them. Quentin Coples. He was known as a guy, like as far as physical talent, he was unrivaled. But his knock was he doesn't care. He doesn't play. When he doesn't want to play, he doesn't play. And it's like, why would you use a first-round pick? Like, that's third-round pick stuff. All right. So that was Rex. Now, people will say, like, Rex wasn't the GM. Rex was the GM. Okay. If you think, that he wasn't, he's the guy. He famously told Quentin Coples at the workouts, if you're there when I pick, I'm taking you. I said, that's bullshit. He's never going to do that. And what do? He took him because he was in charge, man. And it's just, I don't know. That's a touchy one. You brought up the other one, Calvin Pryor. Oh my God. I couldn't even believe it. I remember where I was too, man. I was standing there. I went, what? I thought we were getting Brandon Cook. I'm like, yeah, Brandon Cook. Calvin Pryor.
I knew it was coming. When Rex Ryan and defense went hand in hand. If we was an offensive guy and I heard the name, because it's been forever since I'm able to really watch drafts and stuff, I knew this must have been a later round pick because the first 4 rounds were going to be dedicated to defense.
Always.
But I was excited for the most part, especially with the first rounders for a bit. I was like, okay, yes, I had the whole, lack of development stuff. But for the most part, if it was going to be somebody who was playing on the defensive line, which I thought Quentin Coples was going to be, and then we're playing him at linebacker, he's playing coverage snaps, talking, as you mentioned, a guy that's lacking motivation. It was very concerning. Calvin Pryor, I was excited about. Once I looked into him, I wanted an offensive guy. But when we draft people, I give them the full commitment. Let's try to make it work. Maybe he'll be one of the next great safeties. Who knows? I've seen he can break bones when he hits. I got excited.
The Louisville Slugger.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be honest. Once, just like you said, same exact thing. I knew about him. I just never thought we were taking him. But once we did, I dug too. And I said, okay, at least we're getting a guy who's going to knock the snot out of everybody. All right. Okay. And we'll wait till the later. It was the deepest wide receiver draft in NFL history up to that point. I said, okay, so they'll get a wide receiver in the second. There were plenty of great wide receivers coming out in the second, third. We waited till the fourth to get a wide receiver, which was crazy. But I'm with you. I mean, I didn't want Calvin Pryor. I really wanted Brandon Cooks. He was my favorite receiver in the draft, even above OBJ and no, Michael Evans was my absolute favorite. But right after him was Brandon Cooks. I couldn't believe he was there. But yeah, I mean, I liked him, and I can get excited about Quentin Coples too. But I couldn't believe the guys that we passed on, and the Jets were famous for that, man. Like, you know about the Warren Sapp, the whole place is yelling, "We want Sapp." It just made so much sense. And we took Kyle Brady. It's like, Kyle Brady's a good player. I like, but come on. And Jets fans have been dealing with this for the longest time, which is why it's nice. Joe Douglas at least has a brain. It makes sense what he's doing. You know what I mean?
I love the fact that every time I feel like I may have a draft strategy figured out, granted it's only 3 and his first one was kind of rushed, I've kind of been hit with a whirlwind. I thought there's absolutely no way we pick Sauce Gardner, and he was my number 1 cornerback. It just didn't make sense. When I looked at the way the 49ers were built, when I looked at the Eagles, they don't draft cornerbacks in round 1. They just don't. They find a guy in the mid rounds, maybe the second round at best, and they develop him. And then if it works out with the cap at that time, they give him a second contract. If not, they have a pipeline. They don't care. We've gotten our full value out of our, draft pick. We're going to go ahead and, which by the way, I'm also excited to see us finally start having plans for, what do they call it? Compensatory picks.
Right.
Haven't been a thing for us.
Nope.
But they're coming back around, and now that other teams can trade them and stuff too, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there for us. But yeah, it's been hard to really predict Joe Douglas, in my opinion, in kind of some of these ways people feel like we should lean. His first draft was arguably the only bad one that he had. And again, there's the whole Adam Gase confusion. I don't have any second guesses. I want to say about that first draft, the players that we picked made sense. I just feel like they didn't really pan out. Mekhi Becton was due to injury. Everybody was excited about his rookie year, and then things fell to crap. So you can't really say that's necessarily a bad pick. Everything else in between was kind of bad, but we also had the other offensive line guy that I can't remember that had the neck injury, career ending. So a lot of that was a lot of that was bad. And they thought he could be a dark horse candidate to be a starter anyways after a year. A lot of it was bad drafting, or not bad drafting. A lot of it was bad injury luck. A lot of it was fitting a scheme that no longer was going to matter once we hired Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur. So it's I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. Mekhi Becton is the one that probably we needed to work, because there are so many tackles in that draft that made sense and have had pretty strong careers so far.
Very good careers, a lot of them. The only thing that made that one a bad pick was that, that was Joe Douglas's first pick, right? And it was the COVID year, and they're at their house. It was really weird. The only thing that makes it a bad pick is that there was a safe pick right next to him. So Tristan Wirfs was widely considered the safe pick with that. Like, Mekhi Becton was considered boom or bust. Like, it's a swing for the fence.
Wasn't the argument with Tristan Wirfs that a lot of teams thought he was only like a right tackle?
Right tackle. Well, and look, that's what he's been playing.
Yeah.
So that was I was just going to bring that up. And that's the thing. Like, so I do understand it. Mekhi Becton was a true left tackle. He did not have an injury, issue in college. He's super strong. He ran like a 5.01 or in the 40. I mean, he was doing crazy athletic things for his size. And like you said, his rookie year was phenomenal. We were calling him Mount Becton. Remember him yelling at the sideline, "Run behind me!" Remember all that stuff?
I weigh 77.
Oh, it was amazing. So, like, Joe Douglas, I think he learned a lot from that pick. It's like he chose to swing for the fences, which showed balls, and we weren't used to that. But just like you said, it wasn't a bad pick. It made sense. Like, the fact that Joe Douglas came out of the gate and drafted a 360-pound left tackle and then followed that with a 6'3", 4.38 speed wide receiver, it made a ton of sense. It was exactly what this team needed. Now, if the picks don't work, they don't work. But the picks themselves, the positions and who they went, it made a ton of sense.
100%. 100%. What would be one of the things that stand out most to you from this organization as opposed to what we've seen before? There's a lot of things that you could argue. The way that we structured the GM head coach hierarchy. We could talk about the staffs that they put together, the talent recognition and players that we pick. But what's the thing that stands out to you most that you would say seems like we will have long-term success?
Well, yeah, and one more thing. I didn't see them drafting Sauce Gardner either. I got into more arguments about it. I was convinced. I said, "There's no way."
Same.
Like, no way. It doesn't make any sense. But I'm clearly very, very happy with the pick. You know, so that's how that stuff goes. You know what I think? I think what stands out most to me is the lack of quit, man. And I mean, I just think, and that even goes to, like, Jets fans, we wanted to fire Ulbricht. You know, the first couple games this year, they looked very similar to how we looked last year. We had the 32nd ranked defense all year. Jets fans wanted to fire Ulbricht. There are players like Nathan Shepard, right? We don't like Nathan Shepard. He doesn't do anything. We'd rather see Jonathan Marshall. We'd rather see whatever, you know. So we have, you know, we think we want to move fast on people. We don't want to see, you don't want to give them time to kind of work through whatever issues they have. And I think this regime, it's not only what I see on the field, like with the players, there's no quit. They play till the last second of the game, and we're not used to seeing that. So that's number one. But I think what dovetails with that very nicely is that the coaching staff and GM don't seem to be so quick to give up on players just because they're having a rough patch either. And that to me is key. Like, you can't keep giving up on guys. Like, most players take a minute. We live in this age. It's like, come out of the draft, hit the ground running, or you suck. And I don't know. I don't jive with that. So this regime seems to me like they don't feel the heat on their seat. There's no, you know, like there's no concern that if they don't succeed right now, they're going to get fired. And I think that's enabling them to take their time. Like, they both clearly sat down with Woody and Chris Johnson and said, look, this team is a mess. We're not going to, like, Joe Douglas negotiated a 6-year contract. Robert Saleh negotiated a 5-year contract. A 5-year contract for a first-time head coach. That's significant. Yeah. You know, so the fact that they locked their careers together. So they're both here for the same length of time. They are both signed for the same length of time. They basically said, and this is obviously I wasn't in the room, but the way I look at it is, it looks like to me like they said, this one's going to take a minute. You are in complete disarray. It's down to the nutritionist. It's down to the trainer. It's everything here is dog shit. Okay. The only thing you have is a nice facility. That's it. And we need time. We're not going to come here and in 2 years, we're going to get fired. If that's the case, and you're going to pay me $5 million a year for 4 more years. If you want to do that, then I'm getting 4 more years of pay. And I think that we're seeing that, and that enables the coaching staff to believe in people a little bit more. And I think that's what's going to make all the difference. And you're seeing that represented on the field with the players that are giving 110% until the whistle.
Yeah, and I think those are definitely 2 huge points. The secondary one that you mentioned definitely is one that struck a bell with me when Joe Douglas, I don't remember if he mentioned this in like a midseason presser or how this came out, but he said essentially players are granted like 3-year minimums. I don't, you know, cut people before 3 years. Generally speaking, we're going to give them that opportunity. That's the whole purpose of a rookie contract and us locking in these lower rates. We're not paying, you know, Darrelle Revis $56 million out the gate anymore.
Yeah, remember those days, man? That was crazy.
It was tough for me to go back and think about it. I still love to play my Madden every once in a blue moon at like 12 a.m. and like I'll bust open in 2004 or something, and I have to take a look at the contracts again and be like, what the hell is happening? But yeah, it definitely, I think it resonates with a lot of us. For me, I'm definitely a little bit more old school in the approach that I would love to see a lot of these first round guys, especially if you're going to go the high ceiling approach, not be tossed fully into the fire right out the gate and expect that they're going to be all pro caliber players just because they're picked number one, even in the first round, doesn't mean a whole lot of anything. We've seen plenty of guys flame out across the board from everybody. The Jets have been historically bad with it, so I feel like we have a lot less leeway just because we're tired of putting bad products out on the field, and we feel it. And even the most recent news that we're upping ticket prices next year was significant to me. Sucks for us as fans, but I think that was something where you take a look at the Johnsons and you say they have real belief this time around that we have done things the accurate way, and next year is definitely a playoff team, and we're looking to go deeper than that. Super Bowl contenders, etc. You look at a lot of these pieces that are returning or that we can, that's huge in itself to me, is that nobody's really spoken about the draft. Everybody is still on the up and up about players that are injured and are going to return. I think that speaks huge volumes about where we're at, because at this time last year, or even the years before, I was at least fourth or fifth round deep in the draft doing scouting reports.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. Jeremy from Jets Chaos.
Yeah.
Myself and Frankie from Flatbush were talking last night. And there was a video that one of us, I think of Frankie, we put out just like a draft prospect. And it shot through the roof. Like 5,000 views in 12 hours. It was like this huge, and it's like, it just shows like exactly what you're saying. Like Jets fans, even though we're in the midst of an exciting season, we have a good football team. Yeah, there's some questions, there's some disarray. Maybe we're divided over the Zach and Mike White bullshit. But other than that, we have an exciting team. And I think, most Jets fans like, look, we're happy about it to some degree. But as soon as you put a little draft nugget out there, because we're so used to it, like they attacked it. They couldn't wait to consume it. Who is it? Who are we talking about? Because, like you said, right now, this going into the second week of December, we're usually we're knee deep in draft prospects. I've already done 5 mocks. You know what I mean? Like that's the way it goes. And this year's it's different, man. It's going to take us I think a little while of having success before we untie some of these knots that we've gotten ourselves in over the years, for sure.
Look, I used to argue with a lot of other I wouldn't say argument. I don't really argue with people, but I would definitely make it a point that I think the Jets fan base is the smartest group or one of the smartest groups when it comes to the draft, because we have nitpicked and ran through 200, 311 players, including ones that'll be undrafted in priorities, since October. We're right out the gate. First quarter of the season, 0-4, 1-3. We're already looking at first round prospects. We have a draft board that's right in par with Connor Hughes and Connor Rogers. And, a lot of those guys are putting out stuff, and we're not surprised. We're just nitpicking who's going to be the smartest choice to pull us out of this hole immediately.
True.
It's crazy to think about how far we've come in such short time.
Yeah. Well, it really is. And look, I'm real cautious, right? So this doesn't mean we're out of the woods, right? There is a lot of factors that came into play, whether it's third string quarterbacks or the ball bouncing the right way or, whatever it is. Like, we want to see longevity. And now this year is a special year, right? We have a lot going on. Hopefully we can maximize it and at least get into the dance, right? But we just want to get into the playoffs. Whatever we do there is going to be a good time and fun and all that. So I hope that we can do that. But we don't know what this team's going to look like next year. I mean, we might have to lose a lot of guys. We might come back and not have CJ Mosley and Sheldon Rankins and Quincy Williams, and we might not have these guys. Corey Davis, Carl Lawson. It might be a whole different batch. Now, whether or not this regime is building in such a way that we can weather that, it's going to be interesting to see. But it's like, yeah, man, I mean, the truth is that no matter what happens, this team is being built the right way. It's being built in a way that should be able to last and withstand the test of time. Now, with ups and downs on the way, but I think that what we're seeing, and the reason that, like we talked about earlier, that it feels different is because it is different. This is very, very different. Now, let's see what happens. Hopefully, again, we can make the playoffs and make something out of this exciting year. But next year, we got to see if we can build it and keep going. So while I'm happy, I'm definitely cautious. I'm nervous, man. I'm afraid to go too far into Positiveville because I've been there, man, and I've had my hopes dashed on the rocks too many times, So I'm cautiously optimistic moving forward. You know what I mean?
Nah, yeah, I think that's probably the best phrase to put on it. I definitely have my walls up, my guards, if you will. It's been very much so the same. I have far less experience in this misery than you do, but it's been consistent. It's been pretty bad. But I do love. I don't want to say some of the things that we're seeing are flashes because those get a little bit overused and like understated, I think a little bit, or overstated, I should say, a bit much. I don't remember in my history of being a fan, and of course the first couple years is blurry. I'm a young teen. I'm not fully paying attention in things. But I don't remember the last time we've had as many players as we do currently that have been ranked in the top 5 or 10 of their position. We've been doing this for a long time on the back of a defense, and they weren't necessarily top tier players, to say the most. It was just we had a lot of very good players, and kind of like we're seeing with Robert Saleh, but as a defensive whole, we've seen us dominate teams in waves. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, arguably top 5, 2 of the top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL. You take a look at the defensive line. Quentin Williams is playing out of his mind. He's trying his best Aaron Donald imitation. Carl Lawson, I don't want to say he's not as advertised because I think if people believe what they've seen before, he is. He's a high pressure guy. He hasn't necessarily been able to convert a lot of those into sacks. He kind of looks like he's not top tier, but he's definitely above average. The safeties are what they are. I'd probably expect that's the biggest transformation we see on this defense. But still, we have the Garrett Wilsons and we have the Breece Halls and Bam Knight's turning a corner. Mike White, technically, if you take what he's done these last 2 games over a full season, he's the top 5 quarterback.
Hell yeah.
It's crazy.
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
Let me tell you something too. I mean, and I don't know where we don't even have to dig too deep into the Mike White, Zach Wilson thing, but one of the things I heard this from Nania. I listen to the Cool Your Jets podcast every week with him and Ben Blessington. I really like those guys. I think they're good at what they do, and I enjoy it. But so they were talking about it in the Monday show, I think it was this week. Nania says, Mike White, in 3 out of his 4 starts. So he has 5 starts. The one start, he got injured in the first quarter. So you kind of throw that out, even though he had 100 yards, 95 yards, and a touchdown in that first quarter. So who knows what it would have been, but he said 3 out of his 4 starts, the offense has had 460 yards plus of offense.
Right.
So 3 out of 4 starts for Mike White. The Jets have done that 4 times outside of Mike White. 4 other times since 2015, 7 years. That's pretty fucking crazy, man. You know what I mean? Pardon my French. But it's like when we think about this, like the Jets, we have been so poor as far as offensive output that we've only seen 450 plus yards 4 times since Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brandon Marshall. 4 times. Mike White has done it 3 times in 4 games.
Yeah.
That's something. Like that's something. And hey, look, if he can do it long term, I got no problem with.
Oh no. I guess our guy ran into some issues. We'll see if he hops back in here. Here he is.
With a quarterback that throws 300 yards. Okay. There
Love
it is.
it.
I know my mouse. I do a thing. Like I'm always like playing with my mouse, my cursor, and it just kind of hovered over a what do you call it? A shortcut. And right, I was on a coaster site. I was like, oh shit. Sorry.
Nah, you're good. You're good. I love it. A little bit of extra razzle dazzle to the show.
It is. Right.
Yeah, no, Mike White's he's been exciting. That's just the best way to put it for me. I love a good offensive show because we've had so very few. And to take a look at what he's done over the last year or two, we got to remember the same cast that Zach Wilson was playing with last year when everybody got crazy over his no interception streak over those, 5, 6 games. Mike White was doing the same thing. He didn't exactly have the best talent either. And we're kind of we're still not even seeing a full array of weapons for him. I'm sure Mike White will look even better with, Breece Hall taking pressure off his back. He's had Zonovan Knight now, but it's personally for me, whoever ends up being the guy is the guy. I've said it before. Robert Saleh amazes me so much because this year, I don't think we've seen as much last year. He just really wanted to build his scheme and his foundation. But we're seeing a true meritocracy kind of being built. The guys that have deserved and earned their way onto the field to get some of these snaps, we're seeing them get these snaps. Solomon Thomas is really the only guy off the top of my head, and to a degree still like LaMarcus Joyner, where I say, why the hell are they playing almost 100% of snaps? At least in Joyner's case, Solomon Thomas still shouldn't be playing anywhere near 33% or whatever he's seeing on the field. Same thing with Nathan Shepard, but, I get it. It is what it is. But I love this meritocracy. We haven't seen it before. Rex Ryan had his favorites. Todd Bowles had his guys. Adam Gase, again, whatever alien was inside of his head, watching old football films and thinking he knew how to run a team.
Right.
It is what it is. Such a wild time. We really wish we could strike those 2 years from the record. But
right. Oh my gosh, I'm with you.
Oh man. Yeah, it's definitely been a pleasure though. Would you say it's safe to say you're fully bought in to Robert Saleh and this franchise so far, and this is the best one that we've seen, or have you liked what you've seen from a different coach, different head coach GM tandem?
Yeah, no, I'd say I bought in, man. I'm here. I think there are still things I don't like, things I disagree with. But the thing what I try to remember, man, is that in the same way that I want to give players, a few years to develop, like we cannot keep hiring first-time head coaches and first-time GMs and then get pissed when they make first-time mistakes. Like you can't do that. It's like, imagine like, you're running a bank and you hire somebody, they've never done this. You go, hey, be my teller for the day. And they go up there and they do 70% do a really good job, but they make some mistakes. So get that. You're fired. You suck at this. Like you can't, you know what I mean? So it's just like one of those things, I clearly Robert Saleh has a grasp on on the realm of football. He knows how to motivate men. He knows what he's doing. Now that doesn't mean he's going to work, but we've seen progress where like Adam Gase was going down. It was like getting worse, right? And the team was they lost him. I see, even though they're making mistakes, Mike LaFleur, I have plenty to say about Mike LaFleur. I have plenty to say about Jeff Ulbrich. I have plenty to say. But overall, man, they're doing a damn good job. And the team is buying in. They're playing their asses off. And Joe Douglas has gotten them a whole heap of talent. So it's like, I think I can complain when I see something I don't like. A bad play is a bad play. I could say that play sucked. Doesn't mean I think the player sucks. That play sucked. He should have caught it. No, now you don't like him. I didn't say I didn't like him. I said he should have caught it. Like it's very singular. You know what I mean? But I think overall, I am behind this organization. I believe that they can do it. And I think that we're in for some fun, man. I think it's good times right now. I'm going to actually try to enjoy this for a few minutes.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny too. I was curious what your answer was going to be because I just remember tuning in to like, what was it? The first week that Zach Wilson got hurt in the preseason. And I remember watching the game and, hearing you guys cover the game at least and talking about the defense, and then the injury and stuff happened. And it was just like, well, fuck, man. We the same team has showed up to the 2022 season, and it's going to be another long ride of 4-13 now.
Yeah.
So it's been good. There's been a lot of progress. Again, I think the acceleration has happened more rapidly than anybody could have predicted. I think I don't know. I don't smoke, but I must have obviously found some great herbs somewhere because I predicted like an 11-6 season or something like that, mostly based off division wins and, a steal here or there. But to see us like coming like, just ever so closely to actually hitting anything close to that record, it just tickles me. I'm absolutely elated as a Jets fan because we've been borderline, a 6-win season for us is fantastic.
Right.
Depending on who you talk to, some of us are like, damn the wins. We need the top number 1 pick. So we can make sure we have our pick of all the greatest guys and we don't have to really worry about things.
Yeah, well, look, dude, I think 11-6, I wasn't that bold. I was 7-9. Be somewhere between 7 and 9 wins, I would have been really happy. Now, the fact that we won 6 before the bye, 7 is now, it's not so good. You know what I mean? So we got to win a couple more. But if we get to 9 wins, I'm gonna be happy. Playoffs or no playoffs. Obviously, I hope we get to 10. I mean, 11 would be great. Winning out would be fantastic, man. I'd love it. But look, let's get 9+ wins and see if we can't get that 7th spot and get ourselves into playoffs and start turning this corner. That's how I see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I got a final question for you, I guess, and then we can put a bow tie on this unless you have questions. But speaking of the playoff situation, do you think it's more likely that we see the playoffs based off a division record, or is it just going to be generally we have the most wins out of the AFC conference to sneak into that 6th or 7th slot?
I think we're making the playoffs, and I think we're going to make the playoffs with 10 wins. Like, this is what I really believe. I think we're going to get to 10 wins. I think we're going to win 3 more games. If that starts this week, skidly-doo, I love that the most. But I think we're going to get to 10 wins, and I think that our 10 wins is going to put us in the 6th or 7th spot. That's what I think. I don't think we're going to need any, this team to lose or any of that. I don't think we're going to need any of that stuff. I think we're going to have the 6th or 7th spot wrapped up with our 10 wins. And that would be really good. I mean, I'll take getting in if we need the Chargers and the Browns to beat the Dallas Cowboys to fucking fly their jet over Utah. We need all these things to happen. If that all happens and we get in, I'm fine with it. But I don't think number one, I don't think we're going to need to. But number two, I really hope we don't have to do that. That's stressful. I just want to own our own destiny, get to 10 wins. And just walk into the playoffs like we belong there. You know what I mean?
I got you. Yeah, I'm still. The herbs found me, I guess, because I'm still strongly in the opinion that we could arguably win our division. This Bills win would put us in control of our destiny, so to speak. We'll have the best division record. And I think we can really kind of follow that Seattle Seahawks season, that 7-9 team that won out their division, and then we've seen them explode for lots of success. That's kind of the game plan I foresee in my head. But again, any way that we take the playoffs, I will take it. It doesn't really matter. It would just feel great to wake up during a playoff environment and see the New York Jets flashed across the screen, and not because it's a draft pick.
Right. Not because they just fired their head coach again.
Right.
Something like that. You know what? Let me ask you this, though. And a lot of people have said this to me, and I just, being a Jets fan for as long as I have, I tend to think that they might be right. The whole season is going to come down to Miami. It's going to be a win and you're in, lose and you're out kind of thing. No matter what happens, win, lose, it's going to get to Miami, and we're going to need to beat them to be in. It's happened before a couple times. What do you think? You think that's the way it's going to go?
I want to disagree with you so bad.
Me too.
I really do. So I guess for context, I was not a huge fan of this additional game in the regular season that they threw in. It opens up way too many additional avenues on ways that a team can win out, take that final slot, lose it, etc. It just convolutes a lot more of, a lot of people rely on ESPN to figure out what the tiebreakers are and all that kind of stuff. If everything in terms of that final game for Miami, I think depends on if we win or lose this Bills game. If we win, I'm not really concerned about it at all. if we lose that game, then I think absolutely 100% that Miami Dolphins game is going to be the win and you're in, lose and watch from the couches again. And we, hang our heads high. We look forward to a successful season next year. But I'm also not worried about the Dolphins, oddly enough. I think this is McDaniel's first. Yeah, it's McDaniel's first year. So a lot of bumps and stuff they got to go through with him as well. I'm not as concerned with them. In general, I'm just not very scared of a lot of offenses in NFL. It doesn't matter who it is. The cornerback tandem that we have gives me a lot of this unbeknownst, confidence in the team.
Right.
I just think it's extremely hard to play aggressively through the air against us. But it's interesting. I really hope it doesn't come down to that. I just want to know by week 15 that the New York Jets are in and there's not really anything else that can happen to us. That's kind of where I'm at in life.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I mean, it's just, again, being here so long, it just seems like the football gods, that's what they like to do to us. And I'm nervous for that. I don't want to do that. We've done that a few times, having to beat Miami to get in the playoffs. I just hope it's not us this time. I just want to get to 10 wins and get the hell in there. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, it's close. The Dolphins are right there, but not the Dolphins. The Patriots, the Chargers are right there. You never know with Cleveland. I don't know. They're the oddball, the dark horse, I think, of the whole thing. But I think it's generally down to the Dolphins, us, the Patriots, the Chargers. And hopefully we're the better team out of those four. But I don't know. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think somebody was showing me something that there's still an outside chance that all four of us in the division make the playoffs or something crazy. I don't think that's feasibly possible.
It might be. I don't know. I mean, that's, this is an area that I defer. I'm like, all right, you tell me, what is it? Tell me. Once we get into to a certain level, I'm obviously aware, but that kind of stuff, which teams need to lose and the head to heads and the point differentials and all that stuff. I just go, all right, you tell me what we need. But yeah, I mean, look, the Chargers and Finns play this week. So if we could have the now, technically, I think you might want the Chargers to lose because that puts them even further behind us. But I don't know. I think have them beat Miami. They still stay behind us. And then Miami comes down a peg and we could get into that second place in the division. That'd be real nice. That's what I think I'm rooting for. I can't root for Miami to win anyway, man. I can't do it.
Yeah, that's how my boy Gunny is. He will absolutely not vote for anything that involves the Patriots whatsoever. It doesn't matter, maybe if it's between us and them going into the playoffs or something, like the Patriots need to beat somebody, maybe. But he's like vehemently not. He doesn't fuck with the Patriots whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I get it. I'm with him.
I respect it. Yeah, 100%. But I want to say off the top of my head that covers all the things. I had like a billion questions in my head when we put this together, and I had to scrap all of that because I like things to flow naturally. But
I'm the same way, man. I do the same thing. If I write questions, I get to like 2 of them. That's how it goes. We just talk.
Look, I got a text list in the back of my screen when I'm like recording my videos and stuff, and I end up never even touching on them. I just kind of find my way into it as I go. And if I don't, I'll make a post or something. But
yeah, I think we're good. We did, we did almost an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I looked at the time like 10 minutes ago and I was like, sheesh.
It's not bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, I appreciate it, though. It's definitely a huge honor having you on the show. I respect a lot of the videos you put out there and the opinions and things. They're very well-rounded and objective for the most part when we're able to be. I definitely appreciate you gracing the channel.
Yeah, well, look, man, the honor's mine. I appreciate it. It still tickles me, the idea that guys like yourself would want me on. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, I mean, my schedule's not the easiest to work with. I'm a homeschool dad and I all these things go. So I appreciate you working with me so we could get together and do this. And man, I had a good time. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, 100%. For you guys as well, I appreciate it. One of the most active chat conversations that we've had for a long time in the few videos, live streams I put out there. Definitely looking forward to more of this. Maybe we'll try to link up again. Schedules are hard on both sides, for sure. But I appreciate all you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Go Jets, as always.
Later, everybody.
Peace.